said that basically he called you Stalin and Hitler. And I said to him, but what does Bob have? What do they have that Bob doesn't?
You are
and I said evil, and he was like, no, Bob is evil.
You are a not.
Yeah, he has an unhealthy obsession.
I agree.
Every now and then I pick up people like
This
that.
is what fascists
I've just got to let them
I'm
ride out there.
I'm just going through the channel, watching all the videos I've been watching. I see him come up there a lot. I've never heard him quiet. Never. Except for when since you kicked him out of the group, I've noticed him get worse. You kicked him out of your disciples group, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And I noticed him getting worse since then. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it
Because
appears.
he's not getting the attention that he wants.
Fiat money and the
The
gold
reason why
standard?
he's behaving like
Here
this
we
is
go.
because he's
No.
not getting the attention.
What is the
trying to
difference
steal your
between
crowd.
fiat currency
He
and...
thinks that by behaving like this that I'm getting
I've asked you a
attention.
question.
And that's why I'm
I've
just
asked
going to
you a
ignore
question,
it.
fascist.
He's not well. He's
Ben
got
Stokes!
He's got an
Ben
obsession.
Stokes! Mother
And
Stokes!
he's-
Ben
as
Stokes!
you can see, this is
Mother
not
Stokes!
normal
Virat Kohli,
behaviour.
I hope you're watching
So,
this. Ben
but he's
Stokes!
doing it because you're going to put him on camera. That's why he's doing it. Every
I
time
like
he goes
Ben
on
Stokes,
camera,
but Virat Kohli
he
knows what I'm
sees it as
talking
a
about. Ben
means to
Stokes.
his own
Don't
fame.
you bloody call me mentally
And
unwell.
so
You can't even tell me what
that's
fiat
why he's
currency
behaving
is.
this way.
Wanker. You
Right, guys,
cannot even tell me
I'm
what
going to
fiat
go over
currency
there
is.
and do a
You're going to
talk.
go over there, are you?
If you
Like a
want
little
to hear
mummy's
that
boy.
talk, you need to
Like a
form a
little
bubble.
mummy's
Oh,
boy.
yeah.
So that he doesn't, he can't join us.
Fiat currency, gold standard.
Hey, help me form a bubble. Form a bubble, 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 form a ring, form a ring, form a ring, form a ring.
Block him! Block him!
Come in, come in, come in, come in, come in.
Block him!
Oh, they're well done.
There you go.
Peace and quiet.
Right, just hold your ground, guys.
He's got that ball.
Just hold your ground. Right, guys, I want to go and do another talk,
Alright.
and I want to do a talk about something that's really important.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if any of you have heard, but the Islamists in Syria have done a recent blitzkrieg that has taken them to capturing half of Aleppo and threatening the Assad regime.
Okay.
And you've got all these Western liberal media outlets, ladies and gentlemen, that are all celebrating this because Assad, you know, is an ally of Putin. And so this is something that they're celebrating because they think that this helps the Western cause, and they don't like Assad, and for good reasons. Assad ain't exactly a saint. You know, he's guilty for the deaths of thousands upon thousands of his own citizens. He's not a good guy. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to be clear. I want to be clear. It's all right, just ignore her. Just block her out. The best thing to do is just block her out. Don't let her in. Anyway, guys, so I'll speak up a bit. The reality is that the leader of this Idlib Islamist movement is a former Al-Qaeda operative who broke with Al-Qaeda. Do you think that this man who was in the networks of Al-Qaeda is just going to throw away his Islamist ideology? No. The Western media is celebrating an Islamist insurgency because of their idiocy, because of their stupidity and naivety, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why these Islamists have been able to make the advance that they have been able to do is because Assad's allies are weak. Israel has smashed Hezbollah, thanks be to God, and may the Maronite Christians liberate Lebanon from Hezbollah. But Russia has withdrawn soldiers, support and resources because of its war in Ukraine. These Islamists, as they entered into Aleppo, have already started persecuting Christians inside of Aleppo, tearing down Christian decorations, forbidding public expressions of Christianity. Make no mistake about it, these might not be Al-Qaeda Islamists, but they are Islamists nonetheless. And Putin is more interested in killing Orthodox Christians than he is in defending them. He's more interested in his actual God, Mother Russia, than he is in the God of Russians, Jesus Christ. Because if he loved Jesus Christ, he would be using his resources and his power to defend Christians in Armenia, defend Christians in Syria. He would have, after the Cold War, when he came to power, have worked to try and build a confederacy of Orthodox nations united by common Christianity, rather than planning for 20 odd years for the destruction of his neighboring countries to re-expand along the lines of the Soviet Union. The BBC and other lamestream media are hiding to you the fact that this movement in Syria is an Islamist movement, and they're celebrating it. You should call them out. You should call them out upon their persecution of Christians. Put your hand up if you are a Christian. Thanks be to God. As Christians, we've got to unite. As Christians, we have got to organize. As Christians, we have got to start dealing with the causes of the persecution of Christians, rather than just trying to deal with the consequences of the persecution of Christians. The causes of the persecution of Christians in North Syria and in Aleppo are the Islamist movements. Those Islamist movements need to be destroyed. And we as Christians must do all that we can legally to bring about their destruction, so that the brothers and sisters in Syria can live free. If that means arguing that our government should work with the Assad regime to destroy the Islamists, so be it. If that means pushing our nation states to directly intervene in the war, so be it. If that means arming and training the Christians in the Middle East to defend themselves, so be it. We as Christians need to think beyond the boundaries of the Barnabas Fund and Release International and Voice of the Martyrs, and think of another organization that helps with Christian Concern, so that we are helping persecuted Christians to deal with the causes of persecution, not merely addressing the consequences of persecution. We need to think differently. We're dealing in band-aids rather than cures. We're dealing, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, in remedies, not solutions. The Middle East needs a Christian country. It needs maybe even more than one Christian country, or it needs for Christians to have autonomous regions in the Middle East. Lebanon, the world should, and the church should work actively to make Lebanon a Christian country. The Christian church should work actively to make the Nineveh Plains an autonomous Christian region. The Valley of the Christians should be an autonomous Christian region. That Gaza should be a Christian enclave. It's only when we start thinking radically that we start finding solutions to the problems that we face as Christians.
Make Turkey Constantinople again.
Amen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right now the Kurdish Peshmerga are one of the few functioning fighting forces against the Islamists. I want to be clear, in other parts of Kurdish regions, the Kurds are persecuting Christians. But right now in Aleppo, the Kurds are the only force stopping the Christians from coming under the sway of the Islamists. We should be advocating for an independent Kurdistan, one that we aid and support, one that is a bulwark against Islamists, but one that It is conditional upon it supporting the idea of Christian states in Lebanon, autonomous regions in the Nineveh Plain. Our help to the Kurds must be conditional on them not persecuting Christians themselves.
He's behind you.
Yeah, lock him in, guys.
He's behind you. I'm
Closing, closing. Keep him out. Sorry, sister, it's all right. Just keep him blocked out. Keep him blocked out. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to recognise that the Kurds at this moment are strategically useful, tactically useful, and we should be helping the Kurds. And I have a message for all the Kurds that might watch this.
Okay.
How many Muslims are advocating for a Kurdish state? Here I am, a Christian, talking openly about setting up a Kurdish state. Ask yourself, Muslim Kurds, who's persecuting and killing you? Muslim Turks, an Islamist government in Constantinople, in Ankara, under Erdogan. Who's all speaking up for you and advocating for you? Christians are doing so, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to ask you, Kurds, why not stab the Turks in the heart by becoming Christians, ladies and gentlemen?
Kurds are not just in Turkey, though. They're spread across Iraq and Iran.
Exactly, there should be a Kurdish state, but it has to be a Kurdish state that supports Christians in the Middle East. And I'll finish before you ask questions. And my point is to the Kurds, here are Christians speaking up for you and Christians helping you, whilst all your Muslim brothers in Iraq and Turkey and Syria are killing you and denying your rights. So why not stab your enemies in the heart and become Christians en masse? Now, ladies and gentlemen, my point is this. If we can arm the Ukrainians, why can't we arm the Christians of the Middle East? Why can't we arm the Maronite Christians? Why can't we arm the Syrian Christians? Why can't we arm the Christians of the Nineveh Plain? Why? Whenever we want to, we break the law internationally. We did so in Kosovo. When we broke Kosovo off from Serbia, we set a trajectory that points directly to the Ukraine. Well, why can't we help create Christian countries in the Middle East? Finally, two final points and then I'll take questions. We as Christian people must find a legitimate way legally to create an international Christian defense force. It can be done legally, it should be done legally, and so we've got to find a way to do it legally. Furthermore, Turkey, ladies and gentlemen, Turkey is a pariah state. It is an Islamist state under an Islamist government, and we need to call it out for what it is. Turkey needs to be kicked out of NATO. Turkey needs to suffer economic sanctions. Turkey needs to be treated as the pariah state that it is and suffer sanctions and isolation for its support for Islamists and for its involvement in the genocide against Christians in Armenia, in Cyprus, and in Syria and Iraq when it helped ISIS. Turkey is a fifth column in the West. It is an enemy. It is an enemy. It is an enemy of the West. It is an enemy of the West. And we should oppose Turkey as an enemy of the West. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? He's not well, sir. No, you were harassing him. You were screaming at him and you were harassing him. He's harassing people in the park. Right, ladies and gentlemen. Right, any questions? Go on.
Okay, why is it that the media have to portray these terrorists, Islamists, as rebels? It's like they want to soften
the reason why the media portray these terrorists as rebels that are legitimate rather than dealing with them as the Islamist trash that they are, is because the Western media doesn't want to accept the scope of the Islamist problem. It doesn't want to accept that Turkey is supporting Islamists from Idlib. It literally, I heard on the BBC today, I think it was Laura Koonsberg, saying that the Islamists who were the Islamists leading this rebel movement had broken with Al-Qaeda, as if somehow that means that he's not still an Islamist. He's just created his own Islamist party. It serves the narrative of the liberal elites to describe these people as legitimate opposition to Assad, because the liberal elites oppose Assad, and Assad is an ally of Putin. But nonetheless, and also Erdogan is an ally of the West, but nonetheless, Erdogan is an Islamist. The rebels from Idlib are Islamists. They intend to spread Sharia law through the force. They will persecute and are persecuting Christians. And just like we bombed ISIS, we should bomb these Islamists as well. Next question.
On your subject of Kurds and Kurdistan, to be honest with you, this is a very complicated geopolitical scenario, because the reason the Kurds don't get a homeland is because Iranians are not going to give up their sovereignty to give Kurds a space. The Iraqis are not going to give up their sovereignty to give the Kurds a space, and the Turks are certainly not going to do that. So no one's willing to give up their land to give the Kurds a Kurdistan.
I have an answer. Syria is a failed state. We can give a partial Kurdish state from Syria. Turkey is an Islamist state. I don't care about the national integrity of Turkey. They stole the land from the Armenians and the Greeks. Any Turk that disagrees with me, go and do a genetic test and see how much of your genes are actually Greek rather than Turk. Form your ranks, guys. Form your ranks. Yeah, right. He's unwell, ladies and gentlemen. He's unwell. Now, ladies and gentlemen, don't. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Christians, the Kurds have the right to their own country, and we should help them. But we should help them with a very clear condition, that they, as an ally of the West, must help Christians in the Middle East. And I think that's a fair deal, ladies and gentlemen. And my message again to the Kurds is simple. Muslims are killing you. Christians are helping you. If you want to stab the Turks in the heart, if you want to stab them in their very soul, become Christians en masse. Nothing will hurt them more. It'll hurt them more than any bomb.
That's a voice of today in today's world. How would you relate that to the book of Revelation, end time events and
I don't, ladies and gentlemen. Christians have a bad tendency to try and link any events that are going off in their world and at their time to the end times. Christians have been doing this for 2,000 years. And that means for 2,000 years, Christians have been getting it wrong, ladies and gentlemen. So why don't we just learn from history, trust that when God wants to wrap up time and history, he will, and get on with doing what Jesus actually said, which is about being faithful in your own life, about doing your Christian duty now, rather than trying to predict whether this or that is the end times. Like, if all the other Christians, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is going to be that one Christian generation that are right? They're going to feel very happy about themselves. They're going to say it's the end times, and it really will be. But the chances are anyone who's talking about it being the end times now is just wrong. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Any other questions?
Do you think there's any significance with the ceasefire with Hezbollah and Israel and then the sudden attack in Syria?
Yes, I do. The reason why Hezbollah struck a ceasefire with Israel is because it was militarily and strategically beaten. I mean, in an absolute amazing strike, Israel managed to maim and kill virtually all of Hezbollah's fighters. And my message to the Maronite Christians is this: there is no time better now than to try and liberate Lebanon from Hezbollah. Work with Israel. Help to fight. Help to free your land from Hezbollah's grip. Because the only chance that Christians in the Middle East have to survive is if they control their own economy, their own politics, and their own security. And that's why, as Christians, we all need to be working for this. He really is not well at all.
They've also run out of pages and walkie-talkies, I think.
Yes, exactly. Strategically and tactically beaten. Any other questions? Form your ranks, guys. Form your ranks. Form your ranks, guys. Any other questions? You're feeding him. I'll stop taking questions from you. Right, any other questions on topic?
Well, it's a bit different because there are a lot of borders today, and they have put a lot of restrictions when Christians are going to preach, like even Birmingham. So when you stand and preach, the Muslim come to attack. What could be done? Because it looks like there's a threat going to increase as Christians living in a Christian country.
Right, firstly, Christians have got to let go of this idea that we're living in a Christian country. Just suck it up. We don't live in a Christian country. Let it go. We are living in a post-Christian country, and so we need to think and behave differently. We need to use the law. We need to use the law against Muslims on the street in the same way that they do against us, by putting in complaints about harassment, alarm, and distress. We need, as Christians, to organize ourselves to defend one another legally, to support one another. What you're doing right now is an example of unified work. We need, as Christians, to rediscover the idea of groupthink and to act as a minority in this country, using the narrative of being minority status to argue in our defense for our own rights, for our own practices. And when sectarians like this, who works with Islamists, or Islamists try to take our rights away, we do what we can to defend ourselves. It's all about organization. And that means we've got to have a cultural shift as Christians to stop thinking simply as individual Christians, me and Jesus are buddies, but rather think that we are the people of the kingdom of God and work together to defend one another as a people. But if we are willing to defend one another here, we must be willing to defend our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, our brothers and sisters in Sudan, our brothers and sisters in India, our brothers and sisters in Pakistan, our brothers and sisters in Syria. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Peace with you. Block that hole.
I believe that there's been a very consistent effort by the Muslims in this country to become councillors and council members within various towns and cities in the United Kingdom. Should the Christians be organising in that way to actually go for council membership?
Yes, absolutely. Christians, absolutely Christians. You Christians, you've got to let go of this idea that by joining the Labour Party or by joining the Conservative Party that you can somehow influence them to move in a Christian direction. We have tried that experiment to death and we have failed completely, ladies and gentlemen. As Christians in this country and across the Western world, we must form Christian political parties, and we must give all our energies to those Christian political parties. And so I openly invite every Christian in the Conservative Party, in the Reform Party, in the Labour Party, in the Liberal Party, to join with the Christian People's Alliance. a Christian political party in this country. Because, ladies and gentlemen, unless we are the majority of the people in such an organization, we will never be able to influence it well. And this idea that we can has just demonstrably failed. So why keep doing something that doesn't work? When, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have the numbers. That's why as Christians we need to form Benedict communities. All Christians moving into the same cities and towns and into the same constituencies and parish councils. Because only when we are a majority will we be able to elect Christian politicians who will stand up for the Christian community. Just like Labour is discovering today, where because of the Muslim vote, we now have Islamists in the British Parliament calling for something that looks like Sharia law in the UK, supporting the Islamist agenda in the British Parliament today. Any other questions?
Christian Alliance party you talked about, how do they actually go out to give information on how to meet them or how to interact with them?
Just type into Google, Christian People's Alliance Party. Just type into Google Christian Party, you'll find there's another party in the UK that is Christian. Until we organise ourselves as Christians to stand up for one another, nothing in the UK will change. We must separate ourselves from liberal culture. We must separate ourselves from the liberal elites. We must separate ourselves from the liberal agenda. Because while ever we are married to the liberals, we will never be able to oppose them properly, and we will never be able to reverse the Islamist grip upon our culture and upon our country. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Example of one of the Muslim Islam agenda. What's a policy? What's a specific policy?
Great, here's an example.
Yeah.
Just after, ladies and gentlemen, Islamist terrorists butchered in cold blood over 1,000 Jews in Israel for just being Jews, we saw celebrations from the Muslim community celebrating that atrocity right outside of the embassy. And resultantly, as everyone would expect, Israel started to defend itself. And what did we see? We saw Islamists in our parliament calling for the military boycott of Israel right at the moment that Israel needed the support of its allies. There's only one winner from such a policy: Hamas, an Islamist terrorist organization. That is how the Islamist agenda is being pushed in our parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Secondly, here's another example. Here's another example. Bro, go away. Go away if you want to debate him. If you want to debate, you can come and debate. Would you like to debate? Right, stop heckling then. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not like I don't give hecklers a chance to debate. Ladies and gentlemen, here's another example. The British Parliament, because of Labour's penetration by Islamists, is wanting to pass an Islamophobia law that will create a distinction in law in which Muslims are a cut above the rest of us, because they will have their religious identity protected in a way that no Christian will, in a way that no Hindu will, in a way that no Sikh will. If they're going to pass an Islamophobia law, then we need to have a Christophobia law also passed, so we can prosecute Muslims in mosques who are calling for dimitude and accusing Christians of being polytheists. A crime punishable by death under Sharia law. Next question, ladies and gentlemen. On any topic, or I'll go on to another speech.
Why don't we have a month for persecuted Christians in this country?
Exactly. Why don't we? The Labour Party tried to push Islamophobia, an Islamophobia month for the whole of November. I say as Christians that we make every November Christophobia month.
Yes, right.
Every November should be a month that the entire church around the world raises awareness about persecution against Christians and about discrimination against Christians.
Right,
And when you do that, you're going to see very quickly that Christians are persecuted in every single Muslim majority country in the entire world without a single exception.
Right.
And let's ask the question, why is that so? Since those countries are not united by ethnicity, economy, politics, or any other factor apart from Islam. Let's make the 20th of November Red Wednesday, a day to remember the persecuted church.
Right, yes.
Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Other question.
I'll go, yeah?
All right, look after yourself. God bless.
Find the right of self-defense in Israel, that we know that it's occupied. Can
Yeah.
you tell me, please, what's the right should have the occupied?
Right. So firstly, ladies and gentlemen, Palestine is not occupied. Palestine has never existed as a country. It is a fiction of history to speak about the fact that there is a Palestinian state. There never was a Palestinian state. The Ottoman Empire preceded the existence of the British Mandate. The British Mandate did not create a Palestinian state, ladies and gentlemen. The Ottoman Empire was overthrown by the British. But, ladies and gentlemen, what right do the Christians of Syria and of Lebanon have to defend themselves against Islamists like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Islamists from Idlib and ISIS who persecute Christians? We as Christians should not allow the Muslims to capture the narrative, to change the topic. We should talk about how Christians are persecuted across the Muslim world.
Right.
And let me ask you this. Do you support the creation of Christian states across the Islamic world?
They are living there.
Do you know? That's not the question.
No, before
Notice he obfuscates. Do you see how he obfuscates?
He did, obfuscate. Ask it again.
Would you like to debate, sir? Come here. Why do you obfuscate? Answer the question.
No, you cannot answer my question with a question. Before that I answer your question, you should answer my question before.
Your question,
Otherwise,
okay,
this is not
your
debate.
question is based on a faulty premise.
No, I told you. Give
Your
me your
question
evidence.
is based on a faulty premise.
the evidence of
Israel is not occupying Gaza.
Okay,
Gaza
I will give you the
was an
evidence. I will give you the
Islamist
evidence
state
because you don't know
run
about
by
that.
Hamas
You don't-
that they violently
you don't
took
know nothing
from the
about
PLO.
Let me now.
They killed other Palestinians to rule Gaza, but he never complained when Hamas butchered PLO Palestinians. No, they were silent.
Silent.
Gaza was a self-governing Islamist state. It was not occupied by Israel. Hamas invaded Israel, and now the Palestinians are suffering because of Hamas. So they do not have the cause of self-defense because they are the aggressor. I've answered the question in full. Now he will answer my question.
That's fair.
Do you support the creation of Christian states across the Muslim world? Yes or no?
No. Before that, I
Answer the question.
Before I answer this
Answer the
you
question.
deny the existence of Palestinian. This is the
Answer the question I asked you.
Wait a minute.
Go on, we're going to wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
He doesn't like your
When Israel come to this war, when?
Right.
1,000 years? Wait a minute. Let me finish. No, because if you want 3,000 years, when
Yes.
Jacob is arrived, okay. Jacob is arrived in 3,000 years. Before Jacob, what it was that land?
Right.
Can you tell me who
What's the answer to my question?
before Jacob
Do you support the creation of Christian states across the Islamic world because of Arab Islamist occupation?
Every time when I'm asking,
Answer the
you step
question.
on another one.
Do you want to come in?
Go.
Why you don't answer?
Why don't you answer? And I'll tell you why he doesn't answer.
Why?
Because he doesn't support the creation of Christian states across the Islamic world. In other words, he supports the occupation of Christian lands by Muslims. He supports the colonization of Christian lands by Muslims. Go on, answer the question. And stand there, bro. Stand there. Stand there. Go on, answer the question.
There are also Palestinians with...
That is not the question. The question was, do you support the creation of Christian states across the Islamic world? Do you support it?
Why?
Why should I support it? I'll tell you why. Because for 1400 years, Christians have been persecuted by Muslims. Because 1400 years ago, Arab Islamists invaded Christian land and colonized it and Arabized it. And notice the Muslim is silent about that. He's okay with it. And that's why you must not allow them to capture the narrative. That's why you must speak about Islamist occupation, Arab colonization, Muslim persecution of Christians. Whenever they talk about Palestine, you must talk about the persecution of Christians in the Muslim world. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give him one more chance to answer the question. If he doesn't, I'm going to take questions from other people. Do you support the creation of Christian states across the Muslim world? Yes or no? Okay, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't want to deal with the question, so I'm going to take questions from other people. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Palestinians lived in Palestine. Is it part of their religion, Islamic religion, to always use this strategy and tactics of playing the victim?
No, ladies and gentlemen. It is a strategy of convenience. Because in our world today, in the liberal world, where we've forgotten the history of 1400 years of Islamic aggression, and we always talk about defending minorities, the convenient thing to do is to portray yourself as the victims. But in medieval Islam, they celebrated the conquest, the occupation, and the oppression of Christian peoples. So it is a strategy of convenience. And as you can see, when you challenge the Muslims about their colonization, about their aggression, they don't have answers. And that's why you mustn't let them dominate what the conversation is about. And that's why as Christians, we must be more vocal and ardent in standing up for the persecuted church, even when people don't want to talk about it. And notice, the sectarian, rather than stand up for persecuted Christians, was more concerned with shouting at me, rather than shouting up for his brothers and sisters around the world. And that, in perfect example, is the very reality of the disease of sectarian attitudes. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Right. Any other questions going once?
Last week you were talking about going against Zionism for their Christian persecution. Do you still stand with that?
Absolutely. Our support of Israel should not be a blank check. Israel does persecute Christians in Gaza, in the West Bank, because its security blanket doesn't discriminate carefully enough between Christian Palestinians and Muslim Palestinians. Zionist settlers also persecute Christians in the West Bank and in Gaza. We as Christians must call out Israel whenever it hurts the church. But, ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. In the scale of threats to the church, Israel is at worst, and when it is at its worst, only a regional threat. But Israel at its best is often an ally to Christians. The Christians of Israel have more rights in Israel than Palestinian Christians have inside Palestine territories. And the Christians in Israel had more rights under Israeli rule than the Christians under Hamas rule. And so, Israel should be encouraged to be an ally of the Christians in the Middle East. And our support for Israel should be conditional on Israel's support for Middle Eastern Christians, including Palestinian Christians. Gaza should be made a Christian enclave. Ladies and gentlemen, the Islamists that Israel is fighting will not be satisfied with destroying Israel. They are a threat to the global church. So first we have to deal with the Islamists. We have to deal with that as a greater priority than dealing with Israel. But our support for Israel should not be unconditional. Any other questions? God bless.
Blame Judah killing of Jesus Christ, yes or no?
Any other questions? But he doesn't answer questions. He doesn't have conversation. Go on.
I asked him, would they be willing to give up lands to create a Christian state in that part of the world? He said, no, why should we?
There you go. There you go. So why should Israel? Why should Israel? The Muslims conquered Christian lands. The Muslims occupied Christian lands. But the Muslims say, why should they give it up? Well, Israel conquered Palestinian lands. Israel occupies Palestinian lands. Why should they give it up? And I would go for, and that's the hypocrisy of the Muslim narrative. If they do it to you, it's okay. But if someone does it to them, it's a crime. And that's why none of us should have sympathy for the narrative that he expresses. Because what he wants is to do it to you, but not let you do it to him. Any other questions? Well done, thanks. Any other questions? Going once? By the way, guys, anybody who wants to join me for a drink at 5 o'clock, I invite you to join me for a drink, and we'll go for a drink together at 5. So in about 40 minutes. So, can I get that, bro? Right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go on to another topic.
What's the topic?
I want to talk about